You are watching The Horizon, the voice of the Amba woman, exclusively on ABC Amba TV.
Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. Welcome to The Horizon, the voice of the Amba woman. My name is Dr. Patience Abiedu, and I'm your host for today's program. We are continuing with this subject that we've already talked about the past 3 or 4 shows about selecting a president in La République du Cameroun. But before we get there, let me invite our permanent guest, Dr. Fred Lobati, whom I appreciate so much because he comes to the program with a wealth of knowledge to educate you, to entertain you, and he's the son of the soil. Dr. Lobati, welcome to The Horizon, the voice of the Amba woman. Are you there? While you come on the set, let me just recap. I want to seize this opportunity to extend revolutionary greetings to all our valiant Ambazonia State Army that do day in and day out defend our territory. I also want to send special salute to our refugees, those in Nigeria, Ghana, and other parts of the world, and our IDPs that are residing in La République du Cameroun. Doc, welcome to The Horizon, the voice of the Amba woman. It's always a pleasure having you on this program because, as I said, while you were waiting for you to come on, you come with a wealth of information, and Ambazonians are blessed to have you as a son of the soil. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Mape. I'm very grateful to participate in the program with you once more, especially with this new outlook. I was impressed with the changes that are occurring, and I hope that we'll have a wonderful time to examine the situation of upcoming so-called elections in La République du Cameroun, especially in light of what just happened in Gabon.
Yes, and that's why you're on the program, because you will talk to us about all that give us a lot of information on that subject. Yes, let me also thank ABC Amba Network for the new vision that we see, the new facelift of our program, The Horizon, the voice of the Amba woman. And we always use the phrase, we are here because you are there, and we are staying the cause. God being our leader, God being our protector. So we will start the program today with a short video. I always like to use videos because sometimes it gives us a lot of information. It puts things in perspective, and we learn a lot. And also videos show that we are discussing things that are really pertinent because others are already observing what is going on. So it's not just new to Ambazonians. I'm talking about a video by Adiola, one of these Nigerian entertainer who always talks about what is going on in the world, and she has a special way of presenting the facts about different presidents, about things that are important. And I would like for us to see this video. This video was just done this month, in the month of April, and it's very important. So after we watch the video, then we can talk a little bit more about what is going on now that we are discussing this process of selecting a president in La République du Cameroun.
This prayer more than the rest of us. Ben, in fact, forget about prayer. We've been doing that for decades. Cameroonians, what exactly is the color of your problem? Benny, number one, I know that not all of you, but I cannot believe some of you are still in support of your 92-year-old president running again. The devil is a liar. Tofia, back to the sender. Number two, 42 years did not teach you anything. What is all these opposition parties that you keep forming, they keep banning? Why can't you guys come together and present one front, one face, so you can face... Why am I even getting ahead of myself? Ladies and gentlemen, we heard that the 92-year-old president of Cameroon wants to run again in the next presidential election. What? How is that even possible? No, it cannot be. The man is 92. He's been in power for 42 years. How is that not enough? If you are 42 years old, the year you were born was the year that this man became president. The devil is a liar. That means all the Cameroonians below the age of 42 have never known any other president. And look at where Cameroon is after 42 years. But what is now paining me in my heart, inside my soroko soul, is seeing some Cameroonians. I know that not all of you, but some of you are still saying that they want him to run again.
Philemon Yang is 76 years old. The former Prime Minister of Cameroon says it is their right to call on 91-year-old Paul Biya to run for the presidency.
The head of state is a very intelligent man.
Baba. Daddy, please, whose grandfather is this? Whose father is this? Whose husband is this? Daddy, don't be upset. I'm not abusing you. But I thought they said that you were 76. No, be so. Hey, at the age of 76. You still don't know what is right from what is wrong at the age of 76. The devil is a liar. And it's not the only one, no. Say no maso. They wore matching outfits for Paul Biya, matching with drums, carrying flags on motorcycles.
Trumpeting calls for Biya to remain president. It seems last weekend was another opportunity for Biya's supporters to, in their usual style, assemble bike riders, taxi drivers to start setting the political pace.
Father, once again, who did we offend in Africa? Whose fathers are these? Whose mothers are those? Whose brothers and sisters are those people? Cameroonians, why are you not calling your people to order? Then, especially those of you in the abroad, call your loved ones. Did you guys notice the road on which they were marching?
Even on bad, degraded, untarred roads, members of the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement CPDM party visited Bamenda, Menchum, Fako and Fumbot and the Far North region to convince the people that even without roads, potable water, electricity and jobs, they have to stand with Paul Biya.
Exactly. You still don't have good roads at so many places after 42 years of him being in power, yet you want the same person to continue. You see why I asked exactly what is the color of your problem? Because this one is not ordinary. This is witchcraft. Nothing you do with that. I know that's not all Cameroonians, of course. These are just a few people. But right now, nobody, not even a few people, should be asking a 92-year-old man to run for another term. Not only are some people rooting for him to run again, can you believe that the last time he went home, as in some Cameroonians still lying by the roadside to welcome their president to his country? In case you don't understand, the man doesn't live in his country anymore. He spends like 90% of the time abroad. He only comes home every now and then. And this is what happens whenever he comes home to his country where he's supposed to work. The man lives abroad now permanently. It's been some years now that he's been living abroad. Wow. Again, whose mothers are this? Whose grandmothers are this? Even though we know many of you are tired of Paul Biya, these ones, they are painting you bad. Some people are still saying, they still like him now. Maybe we are seeing videos. It's bad enough that his son is also hinting that he would run after his daddy.
Increasingly, attention is turning to his successor, with his son, Frank Biya, considered one of the contenders to fill his father's shoes, and raising the possibility of yet another political dynasty taking shape.
Can you imagine that insult?
There is nothing official, but that hasn't stopped newspapers from speculating about a possible political family handover. The word is that Frank Biya could replace his father, Paul Biya, as Cameroon's president.
And some people people like the idea.
It's not something new. In the United States, we had Bush. In Canada, we had Trudeau. In Kenya, we had Kenyatta. So Cameroon wouldn't be the first country.
You see? Meanwhile, 2 political coalition groups have been disqualified ahead of the election, which is a way of them clamping down on opposition. And that is exactly why we are saying it is very, very important right now for all the opposition parties to come together. Stop with all the personal interest, guys. Everybody wants to be president. Everybody wants to be... No. Right now, you have to sacrifice for your country. You all have to come together. Choose one person to run against him, because they will allow at least one opposition. Let it be one person speaking for the rest of you, somebody that you know that you can trust. If you know that person, please let me know in the comment section, because I've been asking my Cameroonian people who can run against this man, and they keep telling me that's the problem. The opposition is not united. You have to unite. You guys still have like 6 months. Election is October. This is the beginning of April. You still have 6 months for the opposition to come together. Just form one coalition. I mean, if you've tried various coalitions for 42 years and it's not working, just form one coalition. Let there be one voice, one opposition voice, and you can beat the man hands down. Because it is very obvious, the man is tired. Have you seen him talking lately? The man was at the US-Africa Summit, and he had no idea where he was or why he was there. I think he has dementia, and it happens to the best of us. Nobody is making fun of him. He has lived a long life. Those who surround the man clearly don't have the fear of God. The whole world doesn't need to see him being embarrassed. He's embarrassing himself and Cameroon.
Pourquoi je suis en vedette? Ici. C'est qui tous ces gens qui sont là? Pourquoi je n'ai pas demandé ça? Est-ce qu'il y a des gens importants là?
Des ministres dans la salle. C'est des ministres qui sont dans la salle. Le président Kagame a parlé, il est parti, introduit. Le monsieur vous a introduit. Il y avait un monsieur de groupe qui vous a introduit.
Je dois parler maintenant.
Vous pouvez rester assis, parler assis. Vous pouvez parler assis, étant assis.
Ici?
Oui.
Pourquoi?
I mean, it's so sad. The man just sat there, he farted. He kept looking at the pamphlet in his hand for minutes. That is supposed to be his speech. Then he farted again in public. He put down his pamphlet. His aide came back to prompt him to speak.
Ici? Oui. Pourquoi? C'est moi. Il n'y a personne pour conduire les travaux.
This man has a wife. Chantal Bia, the woman with the biggest hair, always with the biggest wig. What were you looking at? You would think that the bigger the wig, the more brain somebody would have. You would think this woman would have the fear of God. If not for anything else, let the man go and rest. Him don't try. We already know that he's not the one in charge. We know he's not the one in power. So the man himself is ready to rest. Let the man go and rest. Amen, somebody. Now, speaking of resting, if you're an African living abroad and you are tired of having to send money.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. There's a lot of things to unpack from that video. This young lady, Adiola Fayahen, is a journalist, really. She's a journalist, a Nigerian journalist, and she's very bright in bringing up some geopolitical materials, things that affect us, that are current in Africa and other parts of the world. And she has a unique way of presenting the material, and I really enjoy listening to her. Doc, there's so much information. What did you unpack from this video before we delve into other questions?
Well, she is bold enough to present the true facts of what is happening in La République du Cameroun. Even we Amazonians are cautious in what we say. And of course, La Republic citizens are very docile, they say nothing. And she exemplifies the picture of Biya there in the US-Africa Summit shows exactly who he is. The man is in a public place where he's supposed to be alert and been prepared to show his best. You can see how he was failing badly. That is the truth of who this person is in the background. So when you don't see him, you think maybe he's fine where he is. He's not as good as people think in their heads. That man is as bad as you saw and even worse. Now, sometimes I believe that man can die and those aides and those people in La République du Cameroun will keep his corpse in a refrigerator and pretend that he's still living as they continue pretending that they are ruling and looting until they find a replacement to take his position. That is actually what they are planning to do with these so-called elections, and that's why they are standing for him. They're planning to let him hold a place, then they just pretend that he has won when he's so incompetent, and then find the right person to replace him, as the French did when they put him under Abiedu. I may have gone ahead of myself, but that's how I will summarize that video, is depicting the true nature of who that individual is.
Yes, and when she referred to his presence at the African Summit, which was in 2022, almost 3 years ago, can you imagine how he has probably deteriorated since then? Because now this is like almost 3 years later, and they expect him to run for president. But there's some other things that she said that were really entertaining and that we saw for ourselves. Like somebody like 76-year-old Philemon Yang saying that, oh, Biya is an intelligent person. In what world is Biya an intelligent person that he is really saying that, oh, we support him because he's an intelligent person?
In fact, even Philemon Yang himself is too old to be president. He's not physically, mentally fit to run a country. We need dynamic young people in their 30s and 40s who will run around and be everywhere and do everything possible to serve the interest of the people. So even the Philemon Yang who is talking himself is an old person. That's why she was surprised that a 76-year-old was saying such things about a 90-something-year-old. And Cameroon is literally run by such elderly octogenarian individuals, whether it's the president of the Constitutional Court or the president of the Senate or the president of the National Assembly, even the leader of the military. They are all that very old. They are incompetent, physically unfit, and they are just being propped up and protected and using bribery. They bribe the military to keep them there. That's what is going on.
Yes. Yes. Okay. And then also in that video, we saw clips of those mothers and grandmothers lining the streets and are so happy, clapping for their father Biya. It's like, are they celebrating somebody that has done so much for them, or what exactly are they celebrating?
It's the usual thing. They have been given bribes. You know, the way it works, even they showed in Anglophone Cameroon, those people who were going around walking on those very bad, poor, dirt roads and driving cars on them, dressed up with his regalia and going around saying him alone. Those are people that have been giving some little small bribes. Just like those women as well, whenever he's coming or wherever they need them, they give them some money for the day. Basically, just buys bread for the day, and they come out and sing hallelujah and praise him. And basically, what is going on there is, if for those who know the Bible, you know that Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of stew. You know, he came back hungry, and then he wanted something to eat, and his brother told him that for you to have something, give me your birthright, and that I will take your place as the first in the family and no longer you. The rights that go to the first, I will take them. He said, oh, what is that to me? I will die of hunger. I throw it away, and then he sold his birthright. So these people are selling their true rights by taking those little bribes and giving their position and power and future to this octogenarian dying group. They have been bribed. What you see there is the epitome of what bribery and corruption can do.
Okay, Doc. So also in the same video, we hear about the possibilities that this may be a dynasty, in the sense that after he rules as president, who knows for how long, it's just going to be passed over to his son Frank Biya, and people are willing to tolerate something like that. Just comment on this briefly.
Well, you know that even his wife literally is practically functionally the president in his place, and she is over 40 years younger than him. And they mentioned her and her hair, which I regard it as a munkutabak that has been stitched with artificial hair that she puts on her body, just like our jujus that have these gowns that they fit with the feathers of chicken or birds over their body. So that thing on her hair is artificial. It's not her true hair. And some people have even felt that that's where the witchcraft is, that they use it to bewitch the people, to allow them to stay in power. His wife is ruling. And actually, Biya himself calls his wife Madam President, even though she was never elected. And she put her relative as Secretary General of the President, and Biya delegated his signature to him. So Biya is not in power. He is just a figurehead, that, like a statue that they claim is in power. And his wife, as well as his wife's family member, are ruling. Now, his son is the one that they are trying to say that will take over from him. His wife has been struggling to see whether if she does not serve, herself does not control, her relative, who is the Secretary of the Presidency, can take over. And then, so there's been this battle within them. And once in a while, they pretend that there's harmony between them, there's no conflict. And so you have the issue with her son coming up. And when Macron visited Cameroon, he introduced his son to Macron. That is just a trick that they are playing there. But you should know that his wife can never, ever be president. When Mugabe was still very strong and powerful in Zimbabwe, he elevated his wife to the same place that Biya has elevated his wife. His wife was made a doctor, and people were honoring his wife and worshiping his wife to be allowed to be elected to a position. But as soon as Mugabe was thrown out, his wife disappeared from the scene. So the same thing will happen to her. She's just being honored and feared and respected now because of the affiliation to Biya. But once Biya is gone, she's finished. Now, same thing with his son. Right now, they are trying to prop up his son, just like the French did in Gabon when Omar Bongo ruled, and then they replaced Omar Bongo with his son Ali Bongo, that the French have eventually replaced with their cousin. And then even in Togo, you had a Yadema who was there, and then they replaced him with his son, Fade, who is still there right now. Even in Ivory Coast, they were attempting to do the same thing. It's a trick that the French use to bring in family members to continue in perpetuity their looting of the African continent. But even then, I doubt it's going to truly succeed in Cameroon. They can try all they want, but they're not going to succeed. And if you remember in Gabon, they attempted it for a while. That means they attempted for a while, then Ali Bongo got a stroke and was incapacitated, and was a disgrace to see him limping, and even stayed out for months in Saudi Arabia for treatment because he's a Muslim, and then in Morocco for rehabilitation, and then eventually came back and was still pretending to be running elections. So the French just faked and claimed that the elections were fraudulent, and then brought his cousin in to continue what they're doing. So, and then people think that the bongos are gone. Yes, but the bongos seem to have gone, but his cousin is in there. So they do that. That is something guided from behind by the French.
Absolutely. Adiola was really shocked that in a country like Cameroon, some people have not seen any president except one for the entirety of their life. If you're 42 years old, he was president when you were born, and he's still president now 42 years later. And for those who have lived longer, we've seen two presidents, Ahidjo from 61 to 82, and then Biya from 82 to now. So that is telling us that something is wrong with that country. The process of getting a president is more a selection or coronation, if you want to call it. But I want to ask you this question. What is the purpose of Paul Biya's eternal candidacy for presidency? Because he's been there forever. What is the purpose of that?
He's not the only oldest or very old person ruling in Africa. Even in Uganda, you have Museveni. You know, these presidents are controlled by international Freemasonry that prepares them to be beholden to them to serve their interests and puts them there. And as long as they are serving the interest of the West to loot the African continent, for example, they keep you there. And so he is there as a placeholder kept in literally by the French. And sometimes I find it a way of basically dishonoring Africans and saying, I'll put pepper in your eye and see what you will do. So you have this old incompetent person like Biya that you saw in that US-Africa summit. You have others like in Uganda. I told you about Museveni. You see him limping and struggling, even though he's more physically fit than Biya. And it's like, well, what can you Africans do about this? You can do nothing. And so they put these old people in there, and we are docile. Basically, the reason Biya is there is because he's serving the interest of the French. He said he's Mitterrand's best student. Remember, Mitterrand was president when Frundi won the elections, and Mitterrand said they should never allow Frundi become president, and that if necessary, they should go to war. So they were ready to go to war against English-speaking Cameroon at that time. And they literally rigged the election, like you heard Zongang said, that they made sure that Frundi was not. And Achide Acho conspired with them and advised them to go and give Frundi a bribe called small chop, which Frundi took, and allowed them to get away with it. And he claimed that when he accepted to be opposition, even though he had won the presidency. And so basically it's a thing by the French to keep him as a placeholder. As he said, he's Mitterrand's best student. When the French ask him to jump, he's not asking, why do I have to jump? He is rather asking, how high do you want to jump? And even if they tell him to jump 1 foot, he jumps 3 feet. He gives them what they want. He allows them not only to loot the resources of the country, but after he has and his government have embezzled all the resources and money in the treasury and everything in the country, they go back and hide them in Swiss bank accounts and spend them in France. So that's why they keep him, because he is serving their interests extremely very well.
You know, Ibrahim Traore has taught us that you can have visionary leaders in Africa based on what he has done for the 2 years that he's been in office. When you think about that, and you also know that we have Southern Cameroonians that are living in La République du Cameroun, and I'm thinking about Southern Cameroonians that are over 50 years old, 60 years old, 70 years old, 80, and that understand exactly where Southern Cameroons came from, British Southern Cameroons, our history, and yet they are quiet, or not even quiet. Some of them are supporting this guy, like you saw Philemon Yang do. So what role do you think these Southern Cameroonians or citizens of former British Southern Cameroons are playing in this sham elections, or in selecting the same person over and over again?
Basically, they are just using them as a window dressing to deceive the Anglophones that they have a role to play in the politics of that nation. You can see the power of bribery and corruption manifested there. Just like Achide Acho said, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. Let them give Frundi a small chop, and they gave Frundi the bribe, and he took it. Just know that these individuals have been bribed. It's just that we don't know the amount. They have been given money from behind the scenes. I mean, as individuals with their families, they have enough money to drive luxurious cars, whatever car you want to call, Mercedes or whatever one you want to consider. They have privileges, like the Munas have had privileges, raised their children. Personally, individually, they live well and do great. And so these are self-centered individuals. They only care about themselves. They don't care about the population that they are supposed to represent. And so that is the power of bribery and corruption. And so they sold their conscience. In fact, they sold their birthright for a little small chop, a little bribe.
And on the same frame of thinking, last week we talked about the CPDM policy, where we know it was stated there that an Anglophone or somebody from former British Southern Cameroon can never be president of La République du Cameroun. And we know that we have a lot of brilliant, talented individuals 40, 50 years old, 60, that could be president. And we know that we are talking about La République du Cameroun versus Southern Cameroun's Ambazonia. So they have the opportunity to be a great leader in Ambazonia and Southern Cameroun, where they will follow the process of elections based on the talent and what people can offer. Yet, they're willing to succumb to what La République is giving them. Can you go over that document that explains something about Southern Cameroun's British Southern Cameroonian can never be president of La République du Cameroun?
Correct. I'll be very happy to do that. And we need to understand here that here they mention Anglophones, and Jacques Famendongo, the one who is the leader or the controller of national education or higher education in La République du Cameroun, he tells people that an Anglophone is anybody who can speak English. No. The Anglophones that they are talking here are the people of the former British Southern Cameroon, even if they do not speak English or are not even good at speaking Pidgin English. Right. And so we are not even talking of a person indigenous to the territory controlled by France before we came together east of the Mongo, who speaks English even better than King Charles and Prince William. So that's not the people that we're talking about here. We're talking about the indigenes whose forefathers go back centuries in the former British Southern Cameroon, west of the Mongo. And so these are the people that they are talking about here. And they swear that none of them will ever be president. So let me read what they said in their strategy to conserve power in the hands of this Bias Betibulu gang with some few sellouts, people who have been bribed. So he says that we know they don't want secession. That's what they think. But to win big, we will have to accuse them of separation and terrorism. So, first of all, we are not seceding. We are asking to actualize our statehood, because when we were coming together, by all the agreements that Ahidjo made with Foncha, we were going to be two separate states equal in status. So we are not seceding. We want to actualize and preserve and protect our identity as we were when we were coming together, to be two equal and individually separate from each other's state. It is Biya who seceded from the Union in 1984 when he literally reverted back to his name, La République du Cameroun, that they had before we even met to talk in Fumban. So they falsely claim that they think we don't want to secede. We are not seceding. We want to restore our identity and our statehood. And they claim here that they will falsely accuse us of separation and terrorism. So you hear them. Even their foreign minister will go to the United Nations and call us terrorists. That is a false accusation, and they are acknowledging it in this document. In fact, even the Bulus have said that if Anglophones leave La République du Cameroun, they too will separate themselves from that contraption called La République du Cameroun, because they know that the Nordists will finish them. The Bamilekes cannot tolerate them, and they know that they are done after BA is finished. And so they are threatening that they will succeed to become a separate state. And so he was preparing by concentrating all developments in the southern region, the Kribi deep sea port, the airport, trying to make Kribi bigger and better than Douala and concentrate all development there. But even there, the money has been embezzled and stashed away and abroad in Swiss bank accounts in Europe. Then we say we must do everything to ensure that their sense of rigor is perceived as leftism and ridiculed by other citizens. So they know that we are rigorous. When we say we want to do something, stand by it and make sure it's well done, which they don't have. It's not in the Francophones. So they say they want our sense of rigor to be looked down upon, ridiculed, and they call it leftism. Now that's a different story we can go into. You know, you have people who are left-handed and people who are right-handed. In fact, if you go deeper into things, people who are left-handed tend to do extremely much better and stronger and are more dynamic than people who are right-handed. But that's a different story. We're not going to go into that. They are thinking that they will call it leftism and ridiculed by others. Then they go in and said, let's not forget that there are agreements between France and England by which the latter, namely England, renounced all historical claims to English-speaking Cameroon. What they are talking about here is what happened by the time we were acquiring our independence. The British said this former British Island Cameroon is a treasure trove. It's full of wealth, a lot of hidden pearls that nobody knows. So when we were about to acquire our independence, the British didn't want us to go. They wanted to control us under Nigeria, pretended. Remember that it is the United States and the Russians who insisted that European nations must give independence to their former colonies. They reluctantly, they were not willing to do that. And so the British were trying to find ways to keep us, because after the Second World War, these countries were heavily impoverished by the war. They had devastated. Territories were destroyed. They were, in fact, Britain was so poor that it owed more than 2 times its entire gross domestic product. So they were very poor. Even France was extremely very poor. And so basically the British were looking for ways to maintain us under the economic control under Nigeria, as the French were also trying to keep French colonies under their control. And so they realized, the British went to the northern Cameroonians, the Muslims, because they are homogeneous. They gave the chiefs a Land Rover and £100, and the chiefs told their people to vote in the plebiscite to stay with Nigeria, which they did, because they just vote as sheep, as one man. When the leader goes, the sheep just follows. They don't even think. But in the former British Island Cameroon, we think. So you had Endele in the south, who was thinking, and he had carried us from Nigeria and brought us. And then you had Foncha, who was in the northwest. And we are thinking people. If you leave us to ourselves, we want to, use our natural brains to reason things out and discuss it out. And so the British were afraid that they would not be able to control us. So they went and connived with the French, that if in that plebiscite we voted to stay with the French, then France will give them £2 million in exchange for their investments in West Cameroon. Now you can go and debate those investments. Remember that when the Germans had us, they planted all those plantations in the south, in the southern zone, and did so many different things. And the British basically brought now what you had, because planes only came after the 1920s. Okay, so when we talk about the airport in Tico and the deep seaport or WAF in Victoria and also Tico, those are the few things that the British brought. Okay, there are many other smaller ones that we could talk. So they said that the French should give them £2 million for their investments. So when that exchanged hands, because these countries were poor after the war, so when that exchanged hands, then Britain renounced. They said, okay, you take it. And so Charles de Gaulle said after this that West Cameroon, the former British Southern Cameroon, is a small gift from the Queen of England, the one who just died. So that is why they are mentioning here that England renounced all rights over the British Southern Cameroon. Now, we don't see ourselves as belonging to any human or territory, any country on planet Earth. We see ourselves as God's children. God created us. He is the one who owns us. We don't belong to any human being. All right. Then it goes over. It says, it was with this in mind that Frundi's election was hijacked in 1992 without England having anything to say. Because they knew that they had given us, and the French thought they controlled us. And Mitterrand, like I said before, instructed Biya and the La Republique people to make sure that Frundi does not come to power and be ready to go to war. So that's why they are mentioning in this article. They say, however, the fear of Anglophone revenge is not entirely insignificant. They are afraid that we could revenge. But we are not wicked people. We don't go around looking for reasons to revenge. We are just trying to restore our dignity and statehood, and that our people should live well in their own land and actualize their desire to enjoy life. We don't have a desire in us to go and revenge. The people who truly have a desire to revenge are the Muslims in the north who are angry with what Biya did to Ahijo, who are angry with when they literally faked a coup d'etat and killed their military people at Mbamayo and Fo, and is still in them, and they are planning in the future to revenge on them. We don't have that in us. Anyway, he says Anglophones complain of their marginalization, but with the support of France, the threat is less. So you hear them confessing in this paper that France is the one supporting them. So they say, even though we are complaining about the marginalization, they should not worry because France is supporting them. And so we cannot do anything because France is supporting them. Besides, God has destroyed the human race several times in order to rebuild it. So in this war waged by our political party against Anglophones, you hear them saying, they are the people who are waging war against us. We did not pick up arms to fight them. We were living in our territory, in our own homes, and they brought their troops to come and kill us, to the point where old mothers are digging graves to bury their sons and daughters,
Right.
young people that have been killed by the Republic. They're saying that in this war that they are waging against us, the number of dead should not count. They don't care how many people are killed. And they have killed over 60 to 70,000 people of the former British Southern Cameroon. They say it shouldn't count. That is genocide. In fact, Kofi Annan said genocide begins when one person is killed, not for what he has done, but for who he is. So by killing us Amazonians, or former people of the former British Southern Cameroon, for just being people of the former British Southern Cameroon original citizens, that is the genocide. And it's gone beyond one person to over 600,000. And in a higher document, they mentioned that there was a previous Bamileke genocide. They acknowledge it, and they say they don't mind doing a second genocide on the Bamilekes if need be to contain the Bamilekes. And in that genocide, conservative people say over 200,000 Bamilekes were killed by the French from 1946 to 1971, while figures in books written go to 500,000 and even 1 million, which people don't talk about that, but they have done that. And with us, they have killed in this since 2017 over 60,000. So they say the number of dead don't count. They say only those who are actively living count, and they continually kill us, not only with guns and bullets, but even using medical means in hospitals to kill our people, starvation, and all kinds of things. We must avoid any form of pity for Anglophones on the part of Francophones. That's why you see, while they were killing us, the Francophones make like nothing is going on. They go on, make like it's not part of their territory. As long as they're harvesting the oil, the resources of Amazonia, they can kill all of them. And one of their Bulu so-called senators was proud and said that he sent his son to Manu in those days, and that he instructed his son to kill at least 30. And that son, I think, was killed. So they don't even feel remorse. They don't even feel bad in their hearts that people are being killed. They kill people in Bali and roasted their bodies with chemicals.
Oh, yeah.
It's ridiculous. They say that they don't care. Now, we must avoid any form of pity for Anglophones. Like the Bamli case, which they also hate, Anglophones must be suspect in the eyes of every Francophone. So they make all Anglophones, even the ones that are collaborating with them, even if you are more collaborating than a Tanganji or any other, like Diongute, they still suspect you. They even make you remove Amazonian wife, your wife that you were married from former British Southern Cameroon, and give you a Bulu wife to control you in the bedroom, in your house. Make sure they control your account. And even then, they still don't trust you because you are from this side. That's why Diongute went to Bamenda and he was trying to speak, and that thing in him came out. He said, we must restore our dignity, our self-respect. Because
I remember that.
You can have a Bulu wife sleeping with you and give the impression that you're with the clothes, but when the time comes, it slips into you like out of the mouth of a drunkard. You know, the drunkard finally speaks the truth. So he slipped out of the boot and he said, we must restore our dignity. We must restore who we are. So that's why they don't trust an Anglophone. They know that. Don't trust them. Even if you collaborate with them pretentiously like a Tanganji, they don't trust you. He says, the element of English culture among the Anglophones must disappear, especially in the Northwest. Now, the English culture is something we inherited from the colonial masters after the Germans were defeated. If the Germans were not defeated, we would have inherited the European culture of the Germans. Okay? But we have the English system of education and way of doing things as compared to the French way. Now, let's examine that a little bit. If you take the Anglo-Saxon way of doing things, which you see in the United States, in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Britain, and compare it with the Francophone French way of doing things, which you see in France and maybe in Quebec, in Canada, when you compare the two, which one is superior?
Anglo-Saxon, of course.
Every nation on earth has to speak English. Even they struggle to speak the English to prove that they are Anglophones, as they say. So every nation on earth speaks English. And any nation that produces any product or even does any scientific research, you must make sure that it can be read in the English language. The English language is the language of interaction between people all over the world. So they have already lost. They are wasting their time. French culture will not dominate English culture. So they better just yield and let us control them because they are wasting their time. The element, it says, Anglophones in the Northwest are essentially Bamileke, while those in the Southwest are Sawa and others. But we must prevent them from realizing this. In their foolish minds, they think that they're trying to prevent us from realizing it. Now, again, remember I mentioned that the people in the Northwest or in our Anglophone territory have lived there for centuries. People need to read and know this. That we never had roads. When we never had all these roads, we had footpaths through the forest. These cars came just about 100 years ago, and the planes actually they came after 1921. And so we never had these roads that you are talking about and even crying that they have not been paved. So if you look at the features of the landscape, you see the so-called Adamawa mountain range, which starts from the Atlantic Ocean. If you drain the Atlantic Ocean and you demonstrate the features of the land, this mountain range starts from there and goes across the southwest region, where you see not only Man Cameroun in Boya, you see Coupe Manengoba, and crosses through Lobialem and goes all the way through the northwest Man Oku, Man Bamenda, and goes all the way to Adamawa. And you see the same features across Africa in different places. So when people were migrating, as we say, they came predominantly from around Egypt and Sudan. So some of them went across Lake Chad to West Africa and then descended down, like the Ghana territory and all the others. Now, so some of the people, some people went down the Rift Valley, entered the Congo Basin, and then came up across the Atlantic border, because when they met the Atlantic Ocean, they cannot jump inside, so they walked up across the Atlantic Ocean. So what happened is that the people who did not go across Lake Chad Basin, but they entered the Adamawa region mountain range. Remember that we are working with our old people and frail people. The young people can run and climb hills, but people cannot climb those hills. So those mountain range that goes along from the southwest right through to the northwest to Adamawa held most of the people east of that mountain range. And those people that came from the north, those are the people that constitute most of what you call the Bamileke. And so their forefathers, if you read, they originated from the land of the east, as they say. They talk about the plain there in Adamawa. And so there was a mighty ruler who ruled for a long time and had several children. And so when he died, each of those children carried their own group and became chiefs. The most prominent among them, the first, is the son or the chief of Bafoussam, Mifi. And interestingly, the last son among them is the one that originated and founded Fumban. And his sister founded, okay, I can narrate a lot of things. So each of those little children, as they wandered down, they went in there. And so it's true that ethnically there's a relationship between the people of the northwest region, even reaching around to Lobialem. The people in Lobialem are ethnically related to the people of Chad. Okay? They're ethnically related. And so that's what they are mentioning here and thinking in their foolish minds that let's hide it from them. Look at it in their culture, the dances, the things that they do. See the way they dress up and they dance. That goes right far back into our history. Now, there were some other group that came from the west. So people like in Manu did not come from that Adamawa plain that I'm talking. The people from Manu they're rather related to the Igbos. And you also have some other people, it was some plains in Donga Mantung that came from the west, right? Now, when you go to the south, those people, so like Bia's people and the Owundos, they were living around the Sanaga. So as these people were pushing southwest, they pushed them south. And then those people came on horseback and pushed our people further south to where we are. Now, the people that came from the Congo Basin and walked across the Atlantic Ocean are the people that are called the Sawa. And so that's why the people around Douala are related to the people of Bakweri land. It goes all the way right to Indian and you go to Kumba. So they are ethnically related. And that's why they're trying to make it a claim that they're trying to cover it up. This has nothing to do with the colonial culture we inherited from Britain. This is our true identity of our people when they migrated as God distributed them to the different territories. And in their foolish minds, they think they're trying to hide it from us. No, they cannot hide it from us. Now, it says that Anglophones in the Northwest are essentially Bamikese, and that they're trying to prevent us. Indeed, if the Anglophones of the Northwest become aware that they are Bamikese, their solidarity could seriously harm us. Remember, when Frundi came to power and the SDF was formed, at that time, the entire southern Cameroon, as well as the western region, as well as the littoral region, they were supporting Frundi's ideology to basically get rid of Yaoundé, these Betimbulus. And they were feeding Frundi, they were like one. And the reason is because of that ethnic links. And they are wasting their time. They think that they will try to prevent them from being one. They cannot prevent them from being one. But what we are saying is that our identity, the rigor that they said that the Anglophones have, that they're trying to destroy, we don't want to lose it. We want to be who we are with the good habits that we had among ourselves and that we inherited also from the Anglo-Saxon way of doing things. And they cannot destroy it. They're wasting their time. And if you go for that, they said in there that an Anglophone can never ever be president of Cameroon.
Wow, my goodness, that's so much information. But the thing that is a little bit disappointing, Doc, is that even with all this knowledge and history that some of our people are aware of, we still find ourselves in this place where they are waiting to select the same person to be president again. We are talking on this subject as Southern Cameroonians, as Ambazonia, because the future of Southern Cameroons will somehow be impacted by whoever becomes president of that La République du Cameroun. I mean, that's what I think. I may be wrong. But what is your message to, I'm going to list a few subgroups. What would be your message to, let's start with those who are in their 60s, 70s, and perhaps 80s that know our history, that know exactly that Southern Cameroons, former British Southern Cameroons, was supposed to be a nation by its own right, went into a federal system with La République, which eventually seceded. La République pulled out and became back La République. So those people know this history and yet are just comfortable just sitting by watching what is happening, not thinking about the future for their children, their great-grandchildren, in terms of what La République and France are all engaged in. What would be a message to them? And then I'll ask you a message to another younger group of people.
It's very unfortunate. That is the power of bribery and corruption. These are people who know the truth, and they have sold their birthright for a bowl of stew or bribe that La République gives them, which is unfortunate. See, we all know that we are all going to die. Every human being knows that, okay? But the unfortunate thing is that we always think that the others die first. And then we think that we just continue to live. And somehow in us, we believe that we will just continue to live. The reason I believe why we keep thinking that we'll continue to live, because there is the concept of eternal life, which is a spiritual thing. We will not go into that. But naturally, the biologic body that we are in dies. And we just keep thinking that, well, we will die, but the others die first. So these old people you're talking about, they know that they're going to die. In fact, by the time we were acquiring independence, people were dying in their late 40s and 50s. But through vaccinations and new developments and things, people are living to their 60s and 70s. And then, of course, you know that some have been living up to like Mukete, 102. I want to quote those Cameroonians. Mukete lived up to 102. And as people around the world, they can live up to 116. So they are going to die, whether they like it or they don't. One of my very close friends just died 2 days ago. I'm not going to give the name. One of somebody who was worshipping Biya and hoping that Biya will make him a minister, but it never happened. So they are going to die. Unfortunately, they have sold their consciences for a bowl of stew for small chop. And I will advise them, for those who still listen and are still alive, don't sell your birthright for a bowl of stew. As Sankara said, I would rather, stand strong than to kneel down as a slave just to be able to have some food. So it's unfortunate for them.
Yes, it is indeed. We started the program today watching the video that was produced by Adiola, and she gave an advice that why do those who are running not come together, pull themselves together as one big party, select one candidate to go and stand against Biya. Doc, even if they were to do something like that, what are the chances that this coronation that we're thinking will always happen of Biya will not happen? What do you think about that advice that she gave?
She's saying that because she's a Nigerian. We have practiced that thing in Cameroon. And what happened? The bribery and corruption by the French did its work. Remember when Frundi was very strong and very powerful, they attempted to have one common candidate. Actually, that's why Frundi won the elections, because at that time, the entire opposition chose one candidate, but they bribed some few, like the Ademundam Joyas and some few people who refused to be in that one. And Frundi won the election, truly defeated the Biya guy. In spite of all the rigging, they used the DOs, they used the military, they used all the tricks in the books, put down the names of people who were dead, refused to register people who would likely vote for the government, and did everything possible to make sure that the opposition didn't win, and they won. In spite of the fact that they win, Mitterrand gave instruction that he should not be in power because France controls elections in Francophone Africa. France controls elections in Cameroon. France rigged elections to impose Biya on La République and displaced Mbida. France imposed Biya and displaced Ahidjo. France decides who becomes ruler in La République du Cameroun until the day that they will be taken off, the knees of the French will be taken off our necks. Okay, so that is why. So even if you say that you're putting one candidate, it does not solve the problem because they already rigged the elections. So after Frundi won, they perfected the rigging machinery. They actually cooked it in such a way that they already know what the results are. And in some cases, they had even announced the results before the elections even took place. And so then they just wait for the thing to happen. And La République is thinking that they're very ingenious. These days, when elections are held in many countries, the results are pronounced within 2 days. La République will give you like 2-3 weeks and claim that they are waiting to gather results from Furuawa, that they want the results from some remote areas to come. They're just playing on people's feelings and emotions. So after 3 weeks, you've forgotten that elections took place. They claim that they're still counting. And then on a Saturday night, they just pretend that the final results came in and they announced that they are rigged numbers. So it's just a trick by La République. There are no true elections in that country. There's no free and fair election in that country. It's guided by the French. It's a fake. So she's just talking because she's Nigerian. And even in Nigeria too, the elections are fraudulent. But that's a different story. We'll not talk about Nigeria here.
That's a different story indeed. I said I was going to ask you to just address another set of individuals. You have the young individuals, those who are between the age of 20 and 40, those who have only seen one president in their lifetime. But they also know what is going on. They know about the injustice. They know about the marginalization. They know that they don't have a bright future. And they also see what is happening in Africa. They see visionary leaders like Ibrahim Traore doing things that were unexpected. So they have this good, possibilities out there that they can channel their energy and say, oh, there is hope. Yet they know that they live in a country where they themselves do not have that chance of getting into leadership. What is your advice for them, knowing that we are Amazonians, we have a different way of doing things, the Anglo-Saxon way of doing things, where we will have free elections and they can be that Ibrahim Traore right there. someday in the future. They can be
In fact,
Mandela.
that segment of the population that you are talking, they constitute over 70% of the population. And they have only known one person being called President Biya. That means, as Adiola was saying there, they were born after 1982. For me, I was born before even La République became independent. I was born before the children of the former British serving Cameroon achieved their independence in 1961 and lived to experience what Cameroon was under Ahidjo and came of age while I was in high school, where we knew Ahidjo as president of La République du Cameroun. In fact, that means in secondary school, we were hearing a little bit about Ahidjo. In fact, Joa used to visit our school. Joa, the popular former last Prime Minister of West Cameroon, used to visit our school with his Peugeot 504 before Ahidjo killed him. You know, and of course, Foncha lived not too far from our compound. And we know about the Munas and all these other people. But we experienced those people and knew about Ahidjo. And when I was in high school in Cast Bambali, you could not cough by saying anything about Ahidjo because you didn't know who was a spy. And if you said anything about Ahidjo that was negative, they could pick you up and that's all about you. For Chivet, who was in charge of security by killing people, was the person who basically orchestrated, under the guidance of the French, the genocide in Bamileke land on behalf of the French. He was the one ensuring that people were killed. Banqui has been playing that role until they send him on retirement. You always have people that do those dirty things. So Fauchevet was ensuring that. And at that time that I was in Cas Bambili, Dr. Mfogwe used to be teaching in ENS. He came back from studying in Europe and he had lots of degrees, more than the Francophones. And they put him in ENS Bambili to be teaching. And he and Cardinal Tumi, who is now dead, Cardinal Tumi was the director of the seminary in Bambui, and Dr. Ogwe was teaching in ENS. And so they were talking about the bad things about the Ahidjo regime, what Ahidjo was doing. So one day they brought a Land Rover and picked Fogwe and put him inside and carried him to Yaoundé. We thought that was his end, he was going to die. Only for the next day for us to hear that he was made Vice Minister of Agriculture, and since then he started singing Ahidjo's praises. And basically what happened from what I heard is that they took him to a room in the presidency, made him kneel down, and he was afraid whether this is the end of his life. And Ahidjo came from behind and said, Mfogwe, that empty mop, always talking about oil. Is there any oil in Du? Go, I've made you Vice Minister of Agriculture. And since then he became Vice Minister and started singing Hallelujah to Ahidjo. So we experienced Ahidjo and the kidnapping and the killing of people. And then, of course, in 1982, the French replaced Ahidjo with Biya. And most of these young people don't even know about Ahidjo. They don't know that there was a president of Cameroon called Ahidjo. You know, who started ruling in La République du Cameroun before they had what they called independence on January 1 of 1960. And then before we even met in 1961 in Fumban to try to forge a union between the two countries. The people don't know that there was a president like that. And yet there was a president who ruled Cameroon for 22 years. That's from 1960 to 1982, basically 22 years after the so-called fake independence. Ahidjo, from a Muslim from the north around Garwa Guider, he ruled that country with an iron fist. And when Ahidjo spoke, you made sure you said nothing. Because if you venture to say something negative, they'll just pick you up and that will be the end of you. They were torturing people in Cholire and all kinds of prisons. Abed Mukung wrote books about that. He called himself a prisoner without a crime. And then after that, they brought this other fellow in. And these young people who are over 70% don't know that Ahidjo existed. All they know is Biya. So they think that what Biya does is what a president does. No, that's not true. And then they think that their circumstances are difficult, they're struggling, they cannot go into a NAM, they have sold their father's properties to bribe ministers to take professional exams and didn't succeed. They are bribed everywhere and lost everything. Now they're trying to go to Dubai. So they don't know that Biya is literally an aberration. But anyway, these young people, the future belongs to them. And the Western powers know that. The French know that. That's why this young man in France called president, who was born around in late 1970s, this Macron. When he took power, he first went to Africa and said that the demographic is very high. They should encourage young girls not to be having children and to go to school and study. That is the best method of birth control, so that they will have less and less children, because they know that this is the large population, 70% they are dealing with. These octogenarians will die and go. They cannot continue staying there. It doesn't matter what they do. And they cannot kill all, and they will succeed. These young people will succeed. The future belongs to them.
Yes, thanks for that video of late Ahidjo and late President Kennedy. That was taken in probably 62, because Kennedy was assassinated in 63. I think that picture may have been early 63 or late 62. And look at Ahidjo, was a small man, but very powerful. He carried himself well. But you're right, he was a dictator. He was really a dictator. But we're growing up, we're young, we didn't know that much. We didn't know much. You can only compare two things that you know. But I'm saying that in terms of how they've ruled in La République du Cameroun with iron fist, they were not really great leaders in terms of making things good for the people, although Ahidjo did better than Biya in terms of all the growth that we had in southern Cameroon. Excuse me. Yeah, sorry about that. So, Doc, you want to comment on this video that we saw?
So that was young, dynamic Ahidjo. He was born in 1924. Okay, and so in you're talking 1962. How old was Ahidjo then? So from 1924 to 34 to 44 to 54 to 64. So Ahidjo was 38 years old. The reason I bring this age out, people need to know, how old are you right now? So imagine a 38-year-old guy that the French had propelled to the presidency of what they called La République du Cameroun, a fake independence, received by Ndele, and they talked to him, and he was working. Basically, he was remote controlled by the French. He was being remote controlled by the French, just how what Francophone African presidents are. It's important for us to know that this Biya himself, who is, and now, when Ahidjo was going to see Kennedy, that's when he returned from France. He was born on February 13 of 1933. That's what he says. And he went to study in France and came back in 1962. And so at this age, when Ahidjo, at the age of 38, was going to see Kennedy, Biya was about 29 years old. 29. Remember, he was born in 1933. So he was 29 years old and had already been co-opted into government. When he returned from France, this Ahidjo that you're seeing in this video hired him to work with Tekin Boema as secretary and director of the Ministry of Education. And Tekin Boema was praising Biya for being excellent and knowledgeable. So Ahidjo decided to remove him from there and propelled him to the presidency by 1964. And so he was in the presidency already as director of the presidency in 1964. And remember that in 1966, the political parties were all disbanded and they formed only one party, the CNU. So Biya was in the presidency when all the political parties were disbanded and one party, the CNU, was formed. Remember that Ahidjo only finished the Francophone high school baccalaureate, but Biya went to university and came out with diplomas. So he was regarding Biya as more educated. So the French could use Biya to overcome Ahidjo. So Biya is responsible for the things that were written in the presidency from 1964. From 1962 to 1964, he was in the Ministry of Education, and from 1964 onwards, he has been in the presidency till today. So he moved there as director, and then in 1968, when they used Muna to displace Jua and bribed Muna to betray Anglophone Cameroon, Biya was accelerated to Secretary General of the presidency with the rank of Minister of State. And then they played tricks. And then in 1970, when they realized that there was a lot of oil in West Cameroon and they were ready to tap the oil, it's a long story, the French tried to carve out Biafra from Nigeria to steal the oil. They couldn't succeed. So Pompidou, after de Gaulle died, basically told them to accelerate and throw away the so-called federation. And so in 1972, they faked the referendum. Biya was the mastermind behind that document. The French were using him to do that. And so in 1975, they accelerated him to prime minister. And then in 1979, they said that the prime minister would be the person with the right to accede to the presidency if something happened to the president. And in 1982, they deceived Ahidjo that he was sick and could not rule. At this time in 1982, Ahidjo was 58 years old. I keep bringing these numbers up because you should think how old you are. People need to know how old they are. Ahidjo left the presidency at the age of 58. Biya ascended to the presidency at the age of 49 in 1982. So then, and has been there till today, that he is 92 years old. And so since then, he has been used by the French, remote control, just like you have gloves in your hands. When you look at the gloves, like if you go to a marriage ceremony and the bridegroom, they have gloves in their hands. You see the white gloves moving. The gloves don't move. It is the hands in the gloves that are making the white thing seem to be moving. It is the brain that is telling the hand to move the fingers before you see the gloves moving. Biya is the glove. The hands are the French. The head, International Freemasonry, using the French version of International Freemasonry to move him. That's what is going on.
Oh, wow. You know, it's so sad. I'll make this prediction that, and I would like you to predict also. I'll make this prediction that the next president of La République du Cameroun will be either Paul Biya, dead or alive, or Frank Biya. That's my prediction. And then after that prediction, I wonder what the people of La République du Cameroun will do. Maybe that's an even stupid question, wondering, because we already saw the videos, how they were so happy seeing him on the streets and all that. Like, they were already entertaining the fact that he will be their president. But after everything we've said, knowing how their infrastructure has gone downhill, knowing that they have horrible roads, no hospital, terrible schools, everything in that country has deteriorated. Last time we had a video of what was happening in one of their markets, where it was so flooded and people were walking in streams of water in the marketplace. Knowing that they have a president that has no vision, that has no caring, doesn't even know what is going on, and yet they're still supporting him. What is your take? Do you see that happening as a possibility, or do you have another projection?
I don't even want to venture into predicting who will be the president. The reason is because I believe in God. I believe in a superior being, not the superior being of the Freemasons. I believe in the superior being we call God, which is in the Bible, who created the entire universe and owns all human beings, and he created human beings in his image. I believe in him. And I think that he changes things among humans and among nations, and he can overcome and supersede what these selfish-minded individuals and nations like France are trying to do. So if you could bring it back to our realm, the French will try to do what they just did in Gabon. You know, they realized the change that are occurring in West Africa, in Francophone West Africa, so in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Niger, it frightened them. They tried to contain it and prevent it from happening in Senegal. They did not succeed. And now the two young guys are ruling that country, the ones that they locked up in jail and tried to prevent them from running. They are now running Senegal, and they want to make their own money. They want to dissociate themselves from the French franc. They have asked the French military to leave, and they want to become totally independent. And they say that if the ECOWAS countries do not collaborate to really form one currency, true currency, not controlled by France, they will form their own money. That is Senegal. So if you take the West African countries that are controlled by France, Senegal is gone, Mali is gone, Burkina Faso is gone, Niger is gone. So what do they have? They have Ivory Coast, they have Guinea-Bissau, then they have Togo, okay, and then Benin. Those are the few countries. You have, these are West African. I will come back to Central Africa because that's where Gabon and Chad become a good example to speak about the charade that the French are trying to manipulate over there. So you have Nigeria, you have Ghana, and then you have Sierra Leone and Liberia and Gambia that the French do not directly control, even though they still meddle and do their dirty tricks there. Okay, they try economically to manipulate those countries. But these are English-leaning countries that are even doing much better, like Nigeria and Ghana. Okay, but you have those other countries. So they are afraid that what is happening to French West Africa may happen in French Central Africa. So what did they do? They started with that. And what happened is that, remember the French agreement that they signed with Abiedu in 1959 was supposed to be for 60 years. So it was due renewal in 2019. And so the African heads of states in Central African region had to meet in Yaoundé to decide whether they want to renew it. And the man in charge, Idriss Déby, that the French killed, they faked a so-called military uprising and killed. When he came to Yaoundé for the meeting of the heads of states, he was shocked to realize that Christine Lagarde, who is the French lady who was in charge of the International Monetary Fund. It's a long story. The US usually produces the president of the World Bank, and Europe, either Germany or France, produces the president of the International Monetary Fund. So she was the president of the International Monetary Fund. And then the French Minister of Economy, they suddenly emerged in Etude to be among those African presidents. And so Idriss Déby said, what is this? I thought that we as African brothers would sit and decide whether what they signed in 1959 is still good for them and whether they want to continue this. And now you have these French coming here to manipulate them and force them to sign. So he left at night and went back to Chad. And he said that the French advisors manipulated him to change the constitution to stay in power in perpetuity, and that he had not wanted to change the constitution. He believed in term limits. So what did the French do? They faked a military uprising, claimed that he was going to fight as a military man, and then they killed him in the field. And then to cover it up, they brought a child that he raised in his house. Some people wonder whether it's his biological child or just somebody you raise. You know how it is in Africa, we raise other people's children as our own. So they brought him and put him and called it a military uprising. What did Macron do? While condemning the so-called military uprisings in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, he rushed to this military man who caused a coup d'etat in Chad and installed him and acknowledged him as president. A contradiction, right? They don't see it as being contradictory. And then they have faked again and maintained him there. And now the man in charge is trying to also show some level of independence. So then they were trying to contain Central African Francophone countries, which include Chad, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Congo, Brazzaville, Gabon, and Equatorial Guinea is in there for the money. They're Spanish, but they use the franc CFA, and then they try to also control Zaire once in a while. But whatever the case, they were trying to prevent what happened in these Central West African countries of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger from happening there. So they faked the government change in Chad. Now in Gabon, they did the same thing. You know that they had the government, they faked a change of government from Omar Bongo, who had died, to his son. And then they realized that it was embarrassing after he had the stroke. Like I said, he was in Saudi Arabia for months after he suffered a stroke and was doing rehabilitation in Morocco and was not present. And then after he came limping, he was also pretending to be running. So the French used his cousin, who is a family member, who was the bodyguard of Omar Bongo, the former father who died, and was a high-ranking military officer in charge of presidential security. They used him to fake a coup in Gabon, so that people would think that, the military took over and claim that the elections were fraudulent and blah, blah, blah. It was the French guiding all of this. And then if you go and study it, the man of Burkina Faso, Charade, says that African military men to France to be trained are indoctrinated to serve but France and they bring them back to stay in the country to watch over the government, so that if something happens that may threaten the control of France, then they tell them to be activated and take over again to maintain the country under the French. That is what they did in Gabon. So basically, they pretended that, the military man has taken over just to prevent the opposition person from ruling. Because what happened in Gabon is that they did the usual charade of rigging. They use the DOs, manipulate numbers, and in spite of that, the opposition man won. I think his name was Ping. And so they were afraid that if he took power, the French may lose some control. And so then they brought this military man to claim that they were rigging, and then they put him back there. And the French controlled him, faked a change of constitution, and have brought him back. So basically, he is a candidate from Élysée, put in there pretending that there was a change. That experiment they want to do right now in La République du Cameroun. The French have been studying what is the best way to effect a change in Cameroon, so that there will be no true change, and the French can hide in the background like a green snake in a green grass, like a chameleon that hides its identity anywhere it is by camouflaging to look like the background. That's hide their true identity and make it look like it's a Cameroonian thing, while they control the outcome in order to continue looting the resources of the land. And that's what they have been doing. And so they have worked out the machinery of the rigging using the ministry that Atanganji controls, the constitutional court, and all the so-called charade they call constitutional changes. And then they're trying to impose this Biya. He's just a placeholder. He's just there to hold that place called president. Then they will rig it and claim that he won popular after the bribery and corruption. And then they use Ahijo to displace Mbida and use Biya to displace Ahijo. Then they will bring the person that the French want to now replace Biya after he dies, or maybe he becomes incapacitated finally and is bedridden and cannot even talk again and cannot get up again. Then they will replace him with that, so that France remains in control. That's all that they are trying to do right now. All these elections that we're talking about, what the French are doing. So when you say, am I predicting who is going to win? We don't know who is going to emerge. What we need to be vigilant is to see the hands of the French. Whoever comes in, whether it's a military guy or not. Remember that Zongan said that they were ready when Frundi won the elections, that if things were changing to a point where Frundi could become president, then the military will cause a coup d'etat to remove Frundi, either by killing him or get rid of him and put whoever they want. That is that French master plan. So the issue is to be vigilant to see the hands of the French, see the hand moving the globes, see the head directing the hands that move the globes. Don't look at the globes. So Biya is just a placeholder.
Well, we'll find out in 6 months. We'll find out in 6 months, God willing, if we are still alive. I just want to thank you, Doc, for being on the horizon, the voice of the Amba woman. We are talking about all these things about La République's presidency because it's important for us to know. We are still there defending homeland. We have our Ambazonia State Army working hard day in, day out, because we own that land and we want to make sure that La République doesn't forget that. This show is a source of education. We're hoping that the young people are learning from it. Some of us lived through the time of Ahijo and of course now Biya, so we can compare 2 times in history, what happened in the past, what is happening now. We've seen it, we've lived it. Some of you who've lived only when Biya has been president do not know how to compare. You don't know what was in those days. We see the beauty of Southern Cameroon. We see the beauty of Amazonia. What is happening right now in Burkina Faso can happen in Amazonia exponentially because we have so much wealth in our territory. I mean, all the rice we have, the tea, the coffee, the timber, name it, the banana, the pineapple. We can have so many industries in our land to keep our people thriving economically, and that is the goal. So we have to be vigilant and really make sure that we are focused, knowing that our ultimate goal is to own and take complete ownership of our land and rule ourselves. So with that said, let me wish all of you a blessed Good Friday. Today is Good Friday, so I wish all of you a blessed Good Friday, and hopefully that we'll be seeing a beautiful Easter in a few days from now. Thank you for being on the horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman, and I say, short live the quest, and long live the Federal Republic of Amazonia. Thank you, and again, blessed Good Friday.
You are watching The Horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman, exclusively on ABC Amba TV.